Okay, welcome to the Galactic Musician, and today we're in studio with a local artist, a songwriter, and kind of a bit of a legend around town with all the different bands he's played with. We'd like to welcome to the studio Mike Rychlik. Say hey, Mike.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
I'm always good, thank you. And we're also joined by our co-host, John Owen. Say hey, John.
Good to see everybody.
Hey, all right. So, Mike, thanks for coming down today. I appreciate it. And first question is, are you from Tallahassee?
Not originally, but
Okay.
I've realized a while back that I've been here longer than I was anywhere else. So
Yeah,
and
that happens.
Yeah, and I've only lived two places. I grew up in Valparaiso, Florida, which is over near Niceville,
Well, you got
which is
spread out
really even closer to, not closer, but more notable to be near Fort Walton Beach and Destin. Most people
Oh,
know
okay.
where Destin. Yeah,
Destin.
there you go.
There,
Destin.
yeah, now I'm in there.
Yeah, I was there before they destroyed Destin when it was all just natural beach, you know.
Yeah.
And Valparaiso is called the Vale of Paradise. That's what it means, and it really was. I grew up right near the bayou, and it was a beautiful place. But getting ready to start my junior year at college, I moved to Tallahassee.
Oh, okay.
I had a draft number 29, so it was either stay in school or, go to Vietnam, basically go to boot camp in Nam.
Mhm.
And I chose school, and luckily, my senior year, they ended the draft, the war ended.
So, Mike, what kind of got you going in music? Were you involved?
Well, my family was a big part of that. There was a legacy to the family tree. I was actually adopted when I was 5 months, so I don't really attribute it to genetics.
Okay.
But I think the cosmic osmosis just kind of sunk in. My father had already finished his musical career. He had come to Eglin Air Force Bases right next to Valparaiso and Fort Walton.
Oh, okay.
And he had been in the military during the Second World War and came down there to serve. Actually wasn't doing anything at that point in time musically, but he had gotten into refrigeration. He went to a tech school out of high school, and he was on a supply truck, and they pulled up one day, and there was a freezer that was broken, and he had a bunch of meat that had to go in there, and the guys were sitting around scratching their head wondering what they were going to do. And my dad went out and fixed the freezer because he had worked in an ice cream factory in Ashtabula, Ohio. He was from Cleveland. They said, well, we're building this climatic hangar over here, and we could use somebody like you over there. So he got a promotion, and that became his career, really. And by the time he retired from civil service, he was the director of the climatic hangar in Eglin Air Force Base,
Wow.
which is pretty cool. But his father was a classical musician and played in the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra. And my great uncle, my grandfather's brother, he was a real famous in Cleveland in particular, but he was real famous even in Czechoslovakia, which is where they were from. Was a contemporary of Tchaikovsky and Dvorak, and he was over there studying for a while. And then he came back and played with the Chicago Symphony. And
So you were surrounded by music. I mean, even though it might
Well,
have been
yeah.
genetic, your environment.
Yeah, I mean, my parents always. My dad had a stereo system. He was really into, when stereo was first coming out. He loved Dave Brubeck and Nat King Cole and with singers and musicians. They always had great drummers, and he was always pointing that out. I wanted to be a drummer when I was a kid, but my dad said I had to learn a real instrument. So
What do you call a real instrument now? I got to know.
Well, piano was what I ended
yeah.
up like most kids. John and I have talked about that.
This is your uncle?
Yeah, that was my uncle. I found it on eBay, actually, and you can see that it was published in Prague. It wasn't an American release. And,
Oh, yeah.
1929. So it was the end of the 1800s when he was over there.
For all you Americans who
and came
think
back.
that says Prague, it's really Prague.
He became a big time teacher too, and there's Uncle Charlie. He must have been quite a character.
Oh my gosh, look at that.
I never got to know him, which I really wish I could have, and I would have liked to have seen the orchestra play his music.
Well, now is this part of the orchestra?
And that's my dad's band.
Oh, wow.
He had a band
wow.
called Band Northern,
Uh-huh.
and he's the one up in the far left of the back row. Not the very far, but the very back row. Yeah,
back
there
row,
you
okay.
go.
Yeah.
And they played all over the Northeast, but they also every summer for a while would come down to Galveston, Texas, and play at a big hotel for a couple months in the summer. from what I understand, he was quite a musician, but I never got to hear him.
So they decided you were going to play a proper instrument, which was piano, but I see violin a lot too. So
Yeah.
was that in your background?
Violin? Well, no. They actually I have 2 old violins that we inherited that need to be repaired, and one of them's a Stradivarius, but it's not. It's a knockoff Stradivarius. They were actually making in Italy at the time. They were making Stradivariuses that were knockoffs of the real Stradivarius.
Right.
And I was watching a thing, my wife and I, on 60 Minutes many, many years ago, and it was talking about every once in a while a new Stradivarius, not new, but new to the world, would be discovered somewhere.
Right.
And I thought, oh my gosh, maybe this is it, you know. And I tracked down Beer's music store in London as who was. They had been interviewing for most of it. So I took some pictures and sent them some stuff, and they told me it was not a real Stradivarius.
Oh, I wonder. Well, a lot of times it's the color of the finish and stuff, because that wood doesn't come from a particular forest in Germany.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's going to have a certain color, and if it doesn't hit that,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so I came by that, you know. But I only took piano lessons for a very short while. I was like a lot of kids, John included, I can say, because we talked about this before. Got tired of having to practice every day after school and wanted to go out and play with my buddies. I like to play ball a lot and horse around with, you know, in those days, being outside was what you did. You got on your bike and you left, and you didn't come back till dinner time.
Exactly, or maybe a half hour after dusk. You know?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that Saturday morning. You'd be up and gone. You know,
Oh,
to
yeah.
some
Yeah.
field or something, playing
For sure.
pickup baseball. You know,
Oh, yeah.
or football.
Yeah.
And they had no idea where you were, and they didn't worry, which was really kind of.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's the way it was
It
for
was-
us growing up.
We were
Yeah.
pretty much living in the land of liberty and freedom at that point in time.
We were. It was
So we have a little something else here. It looks like we have a program.
Yeah,
Your
that was
dad's band?
that was a handbill for one of my dad's gigs up in Painesville. That's where my mother was actually raised, in Painesville, Ohio, and my mom was musical too. She played the piano, and later, about my high school years, she got an organ, and I started messing around with the organ some.
This is Mom.
That's my mom,
Okay.
and that's my dad, and then I got a sister who has a beautiful voice, and she was really a lot better singer than I ever was.
Well, I have to ask you now, who's the young man to
Well, that's me.
Dad's left? Okay.
That's me with the little shorts on and a little worried look on his face. And there I am at my, so ready to get off stage at my first recital.
My brother's got the same outfit.
Oh, I'm
telling you.
sure. I'm not surprised. Probably the same haircut, too.
Yeah, well, yeah. Oh, yeah. Now that I look at it, yeah,
you-
you're absolutely right about that. And this shot was taken. Oh,
Yeah, that's in my front
Pioneer.
yard. I was just a typical boy from the 50s, and
Davy
60s.
Crockett.
Yeah, Davy Crockett.
cool. Now this next shot, I am assuming, is still in your hometown.
Well, this is my wife Sarah. Actually, I was lucky in life and in love, and married a girl that I met playing in a nightclub. I met her at a friend's house. There was a place called the Red Door that John probably remembers because he's been around here for a long time.
I've heard it.
Down near Lake Ella, it was across the street, and there we are getting married. So,
Oh.
anyways, the long and short of that is that it's more long than short. We've been together for 48 years and married for 45.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and we were blessed. We had 3 kids.
Well,
and,
you are lucky in love and life, aren't
yes,
you?
I am.
Oh my God.
She's the glue that holds us all together.
Yeah. Oh, let's take a look at some of these pictures and see.
Well, those are my boys now. They're grown up.
Oh, okay.
But and all 3 of them play music, so it's been handed down, but it wasn't force-fed. It was osmosis. They came by it from being around me and
They
around
are of
bands.
your own blood.
They are my own blood too, yeah. And there's our grandkids. Those are the new ones. We got an older one. You'll see a picture in a minute. but
Boy,
those
aren't
are-
you just fortunate?
We've been very, very blessed.
Same.
And that happened right before COVID. We started having a new batch of grandkids.
Yeah. I mean, this the continuity of your life.
Oh, and they love
That's why
music.
you're so
These
blessed.
kids are, I mean, they come and there they are,
Look at these guys.
you know.
These are the grandchildren.
The great,
I'm not
they're
going
grandkids.
to say great
Yeah,
grandchildren.
they're not, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But I do have one that's older. and that's my Ella Bell. Ella Bell is just about to turn 21, and she just got back from Europe for this summer. She was in Valencia on the program at FSU, and she traveled around for a couple of weeks before that. But she's also, I was telling John, she's majoring in editing and writing for the media, and thinking about being a lawyer, but maybe she'll stay in music because she started a website for local music here in town, and mostly for the younger set, the college kids, what's going on, and she interviews bands and writes articles about them. So
good for her.
Yeah, she loves music. She was in musical theater when she was younger, and was quite good at it. I mean, I'm her grandpa, but I thought she was pretty fantastic, and she's got a beautiful little voice that I hope one day we'll sing together more. You know, it'd be really great to have
Just
her.
Got to arrange those things to happen. Now, this guy right here.
Yeah, there I am. That was high school when I was a Maverick. I didn't dress like that every day. I was actually in a play that day, Pygmalion, and I just had a couple lines in the crowd seeing me and my buddy Tripp, who's a writing buddy of mine now. I was backstage and playing. I never smoked cigarettes, but I was playing like I was to be a bad
Right.
dude. But,
Well, we've got shared some common ground here because I was also in theater, to technical aspects of it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and I've always enjoyed that stuff. And here we've got.
yeah, that was that first band, and they were called Zephyr. And that's Daryl right behind me that got me into the band to begin with. And Eddie is the drummer over there in the far left on the ground. And Doug, he's getting his hair pulled by me. And the lone gal in there, that's Paula Eastman. And I've known her ever since we were babies. Her dad and my dad worked together at the Climatic Hangar. Her dad was actually getting ready to go on the front in World War II.
Oh.
And right before he got on there, when my dad was being quizzed about the ice cream factory and stuff, and he said, well, do you have any other friends that you know of that are in the service that we could bring down here for this? And he said, yeah, Paul Eastman, you know. So his commanding officer called him in 2 days before they were supposed to ship out. He says, I don't know who the hell you know down in Florida, but you're not going with us. You're going down there.
So people look into things, you know. I mean,
They lived right around the corner. Paula had two younger brothers that were my running buddies. And her parents always let us practice at their house, which was pretty wild back in those days because we were playing really loud music. But it imprinted on me that's the kind of parents I wanted to be. So when my kids started playing punk rock, it was kind of natural for us to open up my practice room to them and their friends. So I had all these punkers with mohawks and all kinds of piercings and tattoos hanging around. And we put on shows out at but they did, out at the co-op, and we would be the sponsors. And I'd be, out in the parking lot making sure the kids weren't sneaking off in the woods. And my wife and all the other moms would be inside with the mosh pit and the crowd surfers and all the noise. And but they've evolved as musicians, as we all have.
you got them to explore.
Yeah,
I mean, if you try to push Beethoven on them, they may or may not like it.
Yeah.
But if they got something they like and they start learning where chords are and stuff, hey, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's important, and I truly believe in the Suzuki method. Not that I teach it or anything, but it's by learning that it's a mother language, it's a mother tongue.
Right.
Music is. It's just like little kids pick up languages a lot easier than adults do because we try to analyze it and imitate it and think about it. They just sort of let it come to them. And it's the same way with music. If they're exposed to it, and my youngest son has perfect pitch, and the reason why I totally attribute, one of the reasons, maybe it have nothing to do with it, but when he was little, I would take him to his preschool. I didn't do that with the others for some reasons. Our schedules, just probably because I was a full-time musician when the other two were born, and I was sleeping a lot later.
Oh, okay.
And staying up a lot later than I do now.
Okay.
So Mama did that, but then I started taking him to entertain him because we didn't have phones, we didn't have iPads, we didn't have DVD players in the back seat. I had to be the entertainment,
Right.
So I would scat him a line of music. I'd go ba-da-ba, ba-ba-da-dee-dee-dee, and he'd go ba-da-ba, biddly-dee-dee-dee.
Oh, wow.
Little 2-year-old. We were having this game, and we'd
Kids
do it
sing
all day
scat.
long, Not literally, but from time to time, because it was kind of like playing catch with a kid.
Mm-hmm.
you're training their ear, but in a fun way.
Who are these guys?
So these guys were the band after that, and Paula and I were in that band, and Doug, the bass player, who's right in front of Paula in the back, and then Eddie's right in front of him, and then that's me. Eddie is the guy that I was telling you about. His mom let us practice in her house, and she made the best homemade peach ice cream in the world. And that's Harry, that was our guitar player in the front, and so we became Big Al Zipper. We found out that there was another band when the band was about to break up anyway, but Zephyr, there was a band in Miami that had a recording deal. We saw them play in Pensacola, and so we thought we better get a new name. Our manager was a guy named Al Rudolph that's been a big part of our musical thing. He never played with us, but he managed us with him, and he booked gigs. And one time we were playing a gig with Zephyr, and we got to the high school that we were playing at that was out of town, and it said Big Al and the Zephyrs, So we kind of said, well, Big Al Zipper.
Well, now this looks reminiscent of John's photographs.
Yeah, that's at the Okaloosa Walton Junior College, where I went to college after I got out of high school. It was my hometown junior college,
right?
And we were doing a little show outside, and Paula used to play keyboards and guitar, and I just sang, and I played maracas and bongos and cowbell, and danced around and acted like a fool.
Well, yeah, that's what was going on then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you're hip.
Yeah, well, I thought I was.
But what happened to the move? How did you come to Tallahassee?
Well, the move was I graduated from junior college. I came to Florida State. And the whole band moved with me, Big Al Zipper.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, yeah. It was a family. It was a real family. Every band, I've been lucky because every band that I've been in became a family, and it just went from one tribe to the next, and the tribe got a little bigger every time because people would go and move away and other people would come in. And,
right.
But Big Al Zipper stayed together for about a year and a half over here. And we just redialed how we were going to do things. And that's when I started playing keyboards again. I started realizing that if I was going to stay in the music business, which is what I intended to do, I needed to have an instrument to be a writer. I mean, I could write. I had written a few songs without being very proficient on anything. But I decided that was where we were going to go at that point in time, was try to do original music. And so Fred Chester, I think, turned us on to Stan Gramling.
Okay.
And so Stan became our bass player. I was telling John the other day that he came over to rehearse with us and just see how it felt. And he said, I think he said, well, you guys got some work to do, but, I like the spirit and I like where you're heading, what your inspirations are. So, and he was the guy that kind of helped us start. And then we called another buddy of ours who we had met, Warren Sutton, and probably if you bump the picture, you'll see these guys.
I was going to say, who are these folks?
'Cause that's where you start getting into La Bamba.
Oh.
And La Bamba was we were actually called the La Bamba Brothers for a long time, and then people kept saying that's kind of goofy because there's already the Doobie Brothers and the Allman Brothers, and none of you are Hispanic, and why do you call yourselves the La Bamba Brothers?
Well, that was the real kicker there, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the reason why is because we were sitting around our house on Atkemeyer Drive, which is over off of Jackson Bluff, and we had a split level house, and John was showing me a house over here when we were driving over where he used to play in high school with Rick Christian, who I know you've met and done a show with. And they had a basement, so this house had a basement, and we holed up in that basement for a year, not playing a gig anywhere. And I was going to school, and I also worked at a gas station. A couple of us did to make a little money, and we didn't need a whole lot because it wasn't that expensive. I think the house was $275, and we all lived in that house pretty much except for Stan. Stan already had a place, and he was living with Sammy, the sax player.
Right.
And so he ended up bringing Sammy into the family. And so
Sammy Tedder.
But the La Bamba Brothers was a takeoff on Cheech and Chong. That was real popular at the time. They go, hey, La Bamba, And so that's Stan in the back there. I'm the one in the hat there in the front. But Stan, I was just talking about Stan Gramling's at the very back. And in front of him and next to me on that side with a microphone, I think, in his hand, that's Warren Sutton. And then that's Eddie to the right of Warren, who was the drummer that I've known all my life. And then that's Sammy over on the far left. And then at that point in time, we were La Bamba, and we were recording a record that was down at Sweet Bay Studios taken, and Ralph Stewart had joined the band, and he was with us the last couple of years we were together when we recorded the album, and he just was like magic. When we got him in the band, we really thought we had it, because our voices just blended really, really well together, and plus he was even a way better singer than I am, and so it was really great to have somebody that strong. And he's a great percussionist too, and just a premium human being. I mean, all the guys in that group were just.
This was La Bamba. That was
La Bamba. Well, we were called the La Bamba Brothers, and that came from La Bamba Burgers, because that's what we were cooking at the time when we were doing our bad Cheech and Chong imitations. But it was a family band for a pretty good while. We went through changes, and Sammy moved away, and Paula left us, and she married Warren, but it just wasn't working the way it had, and we economized, went down to a 4-piece at one time, and then went to a 5-piece, and then it got bigger from there. And
well, talk about the economics someday. How you can afford to be a professional musician in this town?
Yeah, well, the big thing then was who could practice almost all the time, because we practiced a lot. I mean, we came out of that basement, we were honed down, and we had something going, but we were still learning how to write and how to put things together. I mean, the early songs we wrote were kind of goofy, a lot of them.
It's an all original song, banging.
Who owns this cat following me around? Who owns him? I don't know, but that's your cat. His eyes are greener than the cool green that he lit us. His teeth and claws are staring just like razors. He'll cut you deep and he will cut you dirt out. Who owns this cat following me around? Who owns him? Who owns that cat? Who owns this cat following me around? Who owns him? Yeah. His coat is blacker than the blackest night. He's just pretty, but he loves to fight. Who owns this cat?
There's the original group right there, so this is kind of out of sequence, but Paula was still in the group, and next to Paula, that's Paula and Warren in the very front. That's our roadie. His name is Bruce Johnson. We called him Monk, and BJ Monk, Bruce Johnson Monk, ended up going to Nashville and being a roadie, pretty big time. He was with the Judds almost their entire career. They were having some equipment problems. He was working with the Oak Bridge Boys at the time, and they were playing a lot of county fairs, and they were playing a gig with the Judds, who were up and coming in a new band that nobody really heard of, and they were having some equipment problems, and Monk went over there and helped them, and they never forgot that, and they ended up hiring him. And the beautiful thing is that everybody's still pretty well connected,
And they're still friends.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the big thing.
Yeah.
Because I always say being in a band is like being married.
Yeah.
Well, actually, being in a band is like dating. And
Yeah.
if you stay together, it's like being married. So what's our next situation here?
Well, one of the things we prided ourselves on was seeing how many people we could get on stage.
Yeah.
And you can see that's a little stage. The guy standing in front there is Tom Schmick. And Tom played in a band called the Big Ben Jazz Band. It was a really great group.
Okay, let's take a look and see who these next group are.
That's in Palatka. We were playing down there, and they got this place called Ravine Gardens, and it's really beautiful.
Okay, another shot of the 5-piece.
Yeah, there we are again.
Boy, we were young, huh?
Yeah, we were. We were kind of past tense for sure. That's another thing. All the equipment then was so big. That's why most musicians our age have,
Bad backs.
bad backs, and we're always searching for an amp that's really light and that sounds really good. And luckily, they make those now.
Boss is the new one I found. Not particularly heavy. It's got a nice sound to it.
Yeah.
Who do we have again here?
That was our road. I'm glad that John included that picture, because that was our road rig. We literally had a wooden rickety old thing that we put a tarp over those ropes and pulled with Warren's Chevy Suburban. Warren's a pretty good little car mechanic, and he's got a place called Import Authority that he's owned for quite a long time. But he kept us on the road, and we'd all pile in that Chevy Suburban, 3 in the front and 3 in the back, and go to our gigs all over the place, playing these little honky tonks and just terrible places, and and we'd stay in flea bag motels, and we'd have 2 double beds and a couple of cots because we were making such dinky money that we tried to cut every corner
Things
we could.
you could do when you were young,
We were definitely, And
this is when you got to the gig.
Well, that was a better gig. That was actually in Ruby Diamond, doing a show for WFSU TV, and so that was a great gig, and they filmed it, and it was on. That was still when we were 5-piece, and
Now you're playing piano.
I was playing piano. I wasn't a front man in La Bamba. I was just another guy in the band.
Was Sammy singing? Because I'm not Sammy, but
Stan sang,
Yeah.
Eddie sang, everybody sang. Sammy was the only one that didn't sing, but
hard to sing with a sax in your mouth.
or flute or
Isn't that
soprano
what Joe
sax.
Walsh said?
Yeah.
We're going to have a really nice video of them up on the webpage for you, which is La Bamba playing at the Tommy's reunion. It's in 2005, and it's a really excellent video and shows them performing original songs.
When we all started living together on Atkamire, I mean, we'd lived in other houses around town. We were right around the corner from Sweet Bay, and at that time it was called Norton Music and Norton Audio.
Oh, okay. This is where Fred started.
And that's Bert Norton on the left, and that's Ken in the middle, and then that's Kent Phillips on the far right, the taller guy, and he had a sound company called Zorch Audio, and Fred and Kent lived right, probably 4 or 5 doors down from us on Atkamire Drive, and that's where I really got to know Fred real well.
Oh, okay.
It was during that period of time.
Now this is inside that studio.
And that's inside Sweet Bay, and that's actually Flipside there. On New Year's Eve in 1982, we played at Sweet Bay, and Fred recorded us, and I had written a piece of music that was all about the music business. It was kind of based on when La Bamba Brothers went to New York and with a producer, and our dreams came kind of crashing down around us, and just a lot about the music business and what it took to make it back in those days. And
Who are the folks you're hearing?
so that's me right there with one of my many haircuts and that same little look that you saw with my parents when I was scared of the world. And that's Clint Braswell next to me, and he was our guitar player, and that's Ed Bradley in the middle, the drummer, and then Ralph Stewart, who was in La Bamba, and that's Art Ronk, who was in a group called BB Jam that recorded a lot down at Sweet Bay.
Okay.
And that's Fred at the controls.
Yeah, I was going to take a guess and say it was, but
And Fred looks like a kid, and he was,
Yeah.
he looks younger than any of us except for maybe Clint, and Fred's actually a couple of years older than any of us. So he's not going to appreciate me saying that.
Oh,
but he should be proud.
he was mature.
Yeah.
Same guy.
That's still Flipside there. That was a shot that we had, for
You got a young
publicity
look
shot.
there. You've almost like a TV family show
Yeah.
in the 70s.
Yeah, I'm not too crazy about that haircut either.
Harding family.
But that's the same dudes. And
Okay, and then another group shot.
yeah, that was later. That was when I had my.
You could have been in
I
American
didn't. I
Graffiti
don't know
with
where
that
you
hit.
got that. You must have gotten that one from Fred, because
Yeah,
I
Fred.
try to hide that one.
You look like an Elvis haircut.
Yeah,
I was thinking American Graffiti with
that,
the DA
that
and
was my
everything.
Porter Wagner phase right there.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go,
Porter Wagner. Yeah.
right.
Of course, Fred's got an interesting hairdo too, and that's John Waters on bass. That he took Art's place there toward the end,
Okay.
and that's Ralph, of course, and Ed.
Well, here you are actually getting to work.
Yeah, and that was at FSU playing on the green, and that was our original guitar player in Flipside, Jim Evans, who I wrote a lot of songs with. Some of the popular songs that I wrote in La Bamba, Who Owns This Cat, and another one called Heard the News, and another one that we recorded in Flipside called He Don't Hurt Nobody But Himself. He was a co-writer that I worked with quite a bit.
What a profound statement. Yeah, you know, himself.
Yeah, and that was a funny thing where he came over to my house. I lived at that time. I was still living in town, and I lived at in Levy Park on Green Street, and he lived one street over on Milton Street. And he'd always come by, and we'd swap songs, and he asked me what I was up to these days, if I had any new ideas. And I started playing this thing. I said, well, I was playing it with a Latin feel, but I decided to slow it down and maybe just make it a slow blues, because it was a real traditional sort of descending scale blues song, a slow jazzy blues thing. And I didn't have any words at that time, and I said, I still hadn't come up with what I'm going to write about. And he goes, wait just a second, I'll be right back. And he ran over to his house. He came back, and he had just written a couple of days before that. He'd just written a set of lyrics that fit that song just perfectly, mood-wise, tone-wise. It was about a bunch of guys, jobless dudes hanging around. There was a fire pit that was over on Macomb and Old Bainbridge that was near a junior food store that's since been torn down. But they used to sit out there in the morning with with like an old oil can, fire,
Right.
and they'd be passing a bottle around, and
Especially when you're having coffee.
waiting for manpower, I guess, to open up, trying to stay warm.
Who are these cats? Same guy.
But that's Flipside here, and we used to play a beach bar over in Panama City quite a bit, and I loved playing over there. We all did, but that was our home away from home. The thing about all the bands, once we'd find a club that would let us play original music, and we're into that, doing something different, it became a part of our family.
Oh, that's good.
So, but that was at the place called the Beach Party. It later became Schooners, and it's still called Schooners now, but it's not quite the same as it was then.
Okay, who are these guys?
Now, after Flipside broke up, we went to a trio, and I met Sparky, the guy on the far right that's opposite of me. This was playing at the Beach Party too. You can see how sweaty I would get, and all of us would. And that's Ralph in the middle. And it was just a three-piece, and we basically used a drum machine a lot, but we also had the percussion, and I played bass with my left hand and piano with the right. And Sparky is a phenomenal guitar player, and I'm working with him these days on some recording projects. We got a little EP coming out pretty soon, and we're going to have to follow that up with another one. And we've already cut about 12 or 14 tracks. So.
I played with a drum machine one time. Actually, it was a four-piece band with a drum machine. And, boy, you got to be spot on.
Oh, yeah.
He's just unforgiving.
Yeah. Well, you can't get behind is one of the other things. If you got them kind of sequenced in a way to be a song form and not just have a groove going.
Okay, here we are outside again.
No, there we are. Yeah, that was part of the show. Sparky would blindfold himself, and I'm really glad you included that one, John. It's
Sparky,
indicative of Sparky's spirit. He's a very, and John's played a little bit with Sparky. He knows what I'm talking about. He's a bouncy. He's kind of like Tigger. He's a bouncy bear.
A new look here now.
Yeah, that's more of my Gandalf look. Is my.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, the Gandalf.
Yeah, well, when I started teaching high school after I became a grown up to that mode, and I had students calling me Gandalf because Lord of the Rings came out. But Scott played with us for about a year, and then my son's band, Catfish Alliance, stole him from us, and he played with them for about 3 or 4 years and cut an album with them, and totally did just a wonderful job with the psychedelic kind of pop jam music that they did. And that's Ed Bradley on the right, and he's about as close as I've got to a brother. His sons are the same age as my sons.
Oh, okay.
They grew up listening to the same bands because Flipside was that during that period of time when they were really becoming aware of what was going on.
All these years to be together, though. I mean, what a blessing. All
But
these
yeah,
musicians
and that's who I do the
everything.
family band with. We do a family
Yeah.
band from time to time, and when we do the family band, it's all of Ed's kids play drums, both his sons, and then his nephew plays drums too. So and Ed plays drums. One of my sons is a drummer too, but he can also play bass, guitar, keyboards, and he's the one that I talked about, Clayton, that's got perfect pitch, and Casey and Nate play the guitars, and it's about as joyful as it gets when you're playing with your kids.
Oh, I can only imagine. What do we got here?
It just shows that after I'd been in music for a while around Tallahassee, and I got out of Flipside, I started writing for the Democrat part-time. I wasn't a full-time writer. They'd pay me $25, and I'd get free tickets to go to whatever show I was doing. So it was a pretty good deal for me. So I did that for about 3 years, but then I got into another band, and I started, it was a little conflict of interest to be writing about music when you're, a working musician around town.
Oh, I would think so. Now I recognize this guy.
Yeah, those are the Gypsies. And that's Ed and Art again, and me and Freddie.
I must have seen you because I distinctly remember seeing Fred at the Backwoods Bistro.
We played there a lot, yeah.
Yeah. Because he had the spiked hair, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
He's always been a styling dude, That's why I've just kind of kept mine long and pull it back, or else let it hang down like an old weirdo.
You kind of look like a biker there.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah, the biker.
I used to drive a Honda 50 when I was in junior high school. That was pretty hot stuff.
Oh yeah, I remember when Honda 50s came out.
Oh yeah,
that was like the first motorcycle that you could actually afford. A kid could afford that. The 50, then the 90, then they came with 125s. I remember all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we got these people right here.
Yep, that's the Gypsies in action.
Look at you, man.
Yeah. I think we were playing a benefit out of the St. Paul school out there. Played a lot of benefits in my time.
Well, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Giving back to the community.
Yeah.
I mean, they give you a lot.
I've organized a lot of them for people and things.
Yeah, they give you a lot, and so you give back.
Sure.
They were supposed to call me about something out at fish camp for a fireman recently that lost his life. You know, and I said I can't think of any greater heroes, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys run into burning buildings, and don't even ask. You don't have to tell them. You don't have to ask them. They just do it.
That's
It's
right.
like, we got something going on here. This is pretty exciting.
Oh, that's a family band there.
Oh, this is Junction?
It's a Junction. Ed's birthday is actually 1 day away from mine. His is the 6th, and mine's the 7th of May. And so that's the year I turned 65, and I was retiring, and school was almost out. So we played at the Junction, did a benefit for them because they were just starting, they were just opening up, and so we basically, it was not a big cover charge, but
Oh yeah.
and the boys made us T-shirts. It was a surprise to Ed and I, and there's a picture of Ed and I on them. It says the Rychlik Bradley Family Band on them, and we all wore them that night. It's
cool.
pretty cute.
This must have been
Yeah.
reopening of the Junction, because I noticed that big post is not in the middle
Right,
anymore.
right. Yeah, it was. They'd only been open maybe 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
You
Who
know.
are these people? Can you name
Okay,
them?
that's my oldest son, Nate,
Left. Okay.
and he's the one that just gifted us the grandkids. And then the middle son is Casey, and he's the one that was the impetus behind Catfish Alliance. He was the main songwriter for that band, and over there, right next to him, the first drummer, that's Ed Bradley, and that's his nephew Dylan next to him, Dylan Bradley,
He's on a set of drums. Second
Dylan
set?
Bradley Brown. Yeah, he's got a different kit. Just didn't make it down for this gig. He lives in North Carolina now in Asheville, and he couldn't come. His name is Wills Wilson. And that on congas, with his head bowed down, is Ed's other son, Micah, that's got the little ones that hangs on. That's Clayton, the Scat Cat singer, that's playing bass. And that's me playing the piano right there.
He's all grown up.
But he's a real drummer. And one thing that's cool about that, he plays with Of Montreal, which is a national touring group, international. He's been all over the world with those guys. But when COVID hit, he started teaching music, and he started teaching music kind of like what we were talking about a little while ago, about how we were basically taught, scales, and we were taught classical pieces where you were basically learning, finger technique, which is fantastic and really important, but you don't really learn a lot about chords when you're starting out like that. Yeah. And one thing Clayton has done is to make a living during the being off the road for so long. He started teaching on Zoom, and he teaches everything from 6-year-olds to 70-year-olds, and he teaches them whatever instrument they want, bass, guitar, drums, or keyboards. He's gotten to be quite a keyboard player, and he teaches them what they want to learn, basically.
Yeah.
So he catches their interest by, what is it you want to do with this, and then he bones up on some things, and then teaches them where at the level they're at, how he can get them going. He's got a 6-year-old who's an Elton John fan, for instance. He wanted to learn Tiny Dancer.
Oh, wow.
So anyway,
I've always wanted to learn harmony, and nobody really ever taught me how to do harmony, and I just stumbled onto it by myself with chords. Because you do the 1, 3, 5.
Yeah.
There's your harmony notes. But I didn't learn it young enough. I'll be sitting there playing, and I'll go, okay, I've got to sing harmony here, and I'm going to ding, and I go, okay, 3, there we go. Okay, that's my note.
Yeah. Well,
I wish somebody had told me that.
Glee Club is where I learned it. I took Glee Club all the way through junior high school. From the time I was 7th, 8th, 9th grade, I took 3 years of Glee Club, and like I said, I did get pretty good at it.
You got to sing harmony there. Yeah.
But and then the Beach Boys came out, and the Beatles came out, and those kind of vocal groups, to where you could learn a lot about harmony just by singing different parts, because they were all there. And one of the things I always thought of as a writer was the more expansive your hook was, the more people could sing along with it. If you had a low voice, you'd have a low part like the Beach Boys always did. Mike Love would be doing that. Then Brian Wilson would be putting the falsetto on top, and everything in between,
I don't know if it's because of pop music or rock music, but like if I'm listening to country, or more especially bluegrass, I can sing harmony like that.
Yeah.
It's so easy to find because the music's so clean.
Right.
And it's when it gets a little grungy that's like,
yeah.
Well, I'm not sure where my note is.
Well, there's a lot of counterparts too, like in the Beatles and the Beach Boys. There's a lot of counter melodies and things that are coming in and out that make it a little more complex.
All right, who are these guys? Is this
That's the family band, and there's Scott Campbell. He sat in with us that day. We were doing a benefit at the Legion Hall, and that's Casey in the middle. That's Micah playing drums back there. Clayton's playing bass, and then Ed's out front. So Dylan's probably playing the drums behind him. Ed's out front singing harmony.
Okay, with the hit tambourine. Okay.
And that's Nate again singing and playing guitar, and that's Jess over there in the corner playing congas, and that's me on the piano. And one of the things I love when we're doing the family band, I love everything about it, but with so many drummers, we'll do these songs where there'll be a big drum break, and they'll take turns. They'll go from drum set to drum set to drum set, like a little line, changing drummers and getting over to the congas and then back around. And it's pretty cool.
I was listening to the drummer for, I guess, Allman Brothers the other day, and he was talking about how they did 2 drummers. One guy would sit there and hold the pocket.
Right.
And the other guy was, hitting all the accents and everything. I said, I was wondering how they did it, because it's pretty boring, both of them just sitting in the pocket, Let's take a look and see who these guys are.
And that's Nathan with the hat on, and that's Dylan Bradley Brown, who's a drummer, and he was in Catfish Alliance too, and that's me, and then that's Casey, my middle son, who He and Dylan were
Boy.
in Catfish, and
Boy, what
and
a
they're
trip.
talking about getting back and playing some more gigs again, which I'm really glad to hear because I really, well, for one, I like to go in and sit in with them for one, but the other thing is they bring a lot of joy to a lot of people around here.
Well, you're blessed. I mean, 3 kids and you play in the same. Oh, I can't even imagine that.
Yeah.
You know.
And that's my buddy Tripp that I went to high school with. We write music together. He's a really good lyricist, and so a lot of times I write songs based on lyrics that he's given me, and he's given me stacks and stacks of stuff. And
It's good to have a harp player around too.
yeah, and he
It's
likes
just
to play
a whole other
harmonica a
dimension
lot.
of music.
Yeah.
You know.
He's a fun guy, and that's him too. We go to festivals together and hang out. Our wives are good friends, and
Okay, and who's this?
that's Warren Sutton that was in La Bamba. And after La Bamba broke up, Ralph and I got into Flipside, and Warren and Mike Andrews and Sammy started a band called River Breeze that was real popular in Tallahassee for about 25 years. And we were playing on the Strip about the same time, Flipside, and then down the street would be River Breeze. One time there was a place that was bi-level. I can't remember the name of it, but we were upstairs and they were downstairs, you know. But anyway, Warren and I played as a duo for probably about 5 or 6 years around town, just playing at the Blue Tavern. And when the Mockingbird was still open, sometimes we'd
Been
open
there.
for the Harvest Gypsies. We'd play a little set, you know, while people were eating dinner. So we've remained really close. And he just went to a camp with Tommy Emmanuel up in, do you know Tommy Emmanuel, the guitar player?
Oh God, that Tommy man.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was a.
No, it was
sure,
it was that Tommy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and came back just totally jazzed and got to meet him and learned a lot and
He's
said it was-
unbelievable. That guy,
Oh,
he'll play.
yeah.
I mean, by himself, he's a whole
Right,
band,
right.
you know. And then you watch him jam. You think, well, okay, what else can you do? And you see him
Yeah.
jam with
And,
top.
and
top
Warren's like
guys.
that. I mean, he downplays his talent, but he's a marvelous chord man. I mean, he can go up and down the neck just cascading chords. So when I'm playing some kind of simple blues thing, he's just the icing on the cake, just putting all these really fat chords on there that
You're doing the blues on the piano. He's almost like
yeah,
jazz stuff
yeah.
on top.
I'm staying with the root basically, and he's like putting all this passing chords and nice things around it.
I like this next shot. Seems like yesterday.
It does. It does.
People have no idea.
How do you like those pants? Those are pretty wild that I'm wearing on the.
I remember those though.
Now I wear
like
cargo
that.
pants all the time because all the keys and stuff and glasses and stuff that I'm carrying.
Well, so have you spent most of your life just doing original music or covers? Or mixture?
I'd say most of my life doing originals.
Yeah.
Like I said, and I think it was probably 1971 or maybe 72 on La Bamba Brothers, we made that commitment to ourselves. If we were going to stay in the music business, we didn't want to be in show business. We wanted to be in the business of recording and writing material.
So were you focusing more on writing music or being a recording artist or
all of the above.
all the above?
All the above,
Just-
yeah. I
just
mean,
be
the
involved.
Beatles broke that wide open for everybody. When the Beatles happened, the beauty of it was the business changed in a lot of ways, and people became, their own force of. Not that everybody did, and there were still songwriters, but the whole Brill building thing started. A lot of those writers
Oh, yeah.
became solo artists themselves.
Brill, wasn't it?
Like
Where,
Carole King was.
those
Carole
guys?
King, she became one of the biggest things in the early '70s when the singer-songwriter thing started. But it actually. Began with the Beatles as far as you could go up there and you could do your own thing. You didn't have the record company telling you what songs to cut,
I remember the story of James Taylor that I heard from Leland Sklar, actually. They were on tour with him as his backup band.
Oh, wow.
And her album hit. And so she had to leave the tour and put the band together and go out and tour the new album, So Leland's like, well, okay, we got to get a piano player.
Well, and
So we're in the middle of tour.
James had a lot to do with getting her out there to do that, because when she was playing backup for him, he kind of had to gently, push her into singing a verse of
Well,
"We Got a Friend."
How many
You've
great
got a friend.
how many great writers have actually become performers? You know, when I think of Barry Manilow, I mean, maybe not people look at it as rock and roll guys, but Barry Manilow
yeah.
for sure. Mac Davis,
Yeah, sure.
all these cats
Yeah.
were all writing songs.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite lines, and I guess because I related to it, because I don't have a real wide range vocally. You know, I'm more of a baritone than a tenor, and
Okay.
you know, can hang with my falsetto a little bit here and there, but not real strong sense. But Chris Christopherson was a janitor in a
Sure.
recording studio in Nashville, and he just started writing songs. He was listening and watching and, you know, figuring things out and meeting people too, you know, a little bit. But he always said, I was just glad that I couldn't sing good enough to play Holiday Inns, because it made me turn into a writer. Because if nobody else could sing my songs, I could, you know. And so
He's a little bit like Neil Diamond, isn't he? He kind of writes for himself.
yeah,
I mean,
well, yeah.
it's hard to find a lot of their songs
Yeah.
you can actually sing.
And that was one of the things when I went to Nashville to try to push songs, and I've done that several times. Every time I walked away, it was like, well, you got to hunker down here, and you got to be on top of the business, is what I've learned more than anything. Because what I thought was the case was, if you had a really great song, because I was thinking of it in artistic terms,
Yeah.
not just in the business.
Yeah.
I thought that if you had a really great song like Pierce Pettis, I don't know if you know Pierce, but he's got a song called Grandmother Song.
Mhm.
And that song could be a hit anytime, anywhere, in every generation, because it's written in a traditional kind of sense. It's about his grandmother being a poet when she was younger, but nobody would know it because she was in a nursing home and had hardening of the arteries, and her mind was going away, you know.
Right.
But it's a very touching, beautiful song, you know, and even as a country song would be a tremendous song, I thought.
Okay.
But they don't operate like that.
Gotta get the
They're
right
looking for
artist.
who's getting ready to record and how can I pitch this right away. You know, they're not looking at sandbagging a big bunch of songs that they like, that they think are credible and going to be, or incredible, they're going to be credible. They're looking for that hit, that right at that moment.
I don't think a lot of people realize it's a business.
It is.
I mean, we all view things as being artists, you
Right.
know, and I always do.
Right.
I give 110% every time I open my mouth, and I try to be as artistic as I can with whatever material I have.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's a business.
Mhm.
I mean, even when you're doing covers in a bar, you gotta be playing the covers that they want to hear in that bar.
Right.
Because
right.
the bar owner, it's a business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the sad part of it. Well, John,
Although
you've been quiet
I
over
could
there,
do a whole
buddy.
show
Well,
about that.
enjoying the conversation. And
Well, you guys are the writers now. You know.
well, I was even like keyboard players. You mentioned Dave Brubeck earlier, and I saw him one time in New York, and I was amazed how he played with his hands, because he played like this,
Mhm.
you know, not like anything like that. And I just wondered how he could possibly do that, but his hands were pretty big.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he had great flexibility.
Yeah.
He was an amazing keyboard player, and the sax player I played with him was excellent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
That's when I fell in love with sax, because and alto sax is one of the most beautiful instruments. I mean, they all sound good. I love I love a baritone sax, even, you know, when it's way down low, and a tenor sax is real. Junior Walker plays it.
Let's call it sex.
A shotgun, you know,
bring
it's
that
just like,
sex
yeah,
thing.
you know, it'll rip right through your. But there's something about a alto sax, and that's why when Sammy joined our band, or came to see if he wanted to join our band, Sammy Tedder, it was just like took me back to then. And we used to actually play Take Five as a cover song in that band, and that was, you know, but Dave Brubeck was a big influence on me, not so much as a keyboard player, but just as an artist, because he took jazz into a new place, you know. His time signature stuff,
Changing times.
he made it sound like it was just as smooth as a classic bio or something.
Yeah,
you
when
know,
you're
it's just
when you're adding Sammy to you, and then you know Stan. I mean, they're very jazzy, and that's kind of like what I like about La Bamba
right.
band. Had a jazz flavor to it,
Yeah,
and I think people will enjoy listening to it on your site.
yeah. It was a convergence of a lot of different sensibilities musically, and we just learned how to move around together and musically, you know. And if we got out there, and we used to get way out there, we loved to jam, and we could always find our way home because we knew how each other we just knew how to anticipate each other's moves and how to get back to, you know.
I find the biggest thing is for people to learn how to get out of each other's way.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Step back and let the other one go forward. You know?
Well, I think Chet Atkins said it's not what you play a lot of times, it's what you don't play. You
Oh
know?
my God!
Yeah.
I have a guy.
He made a lot of hit records.
Oh, shit. Well, either recorded them, played on them, or produced
That's what I
them.
mean.
You know? I was playing in Detroit years ago, and Smoking Mel Kerner, he'd always thrash the fretboard. And one day I said, Mel, you didn't play a lot of lead on that song. What? You're not feeling good? And he said, sometimes it's what you don't play that's important.
That's right. That's
and I
right.
thought, wow, space.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one thing I like about playing acoustic is just me and Warren when we do that is that it's taught me to really be more poignant sometimes with space, not be trying to keep the beat going or trying to when you're playing with a band you're just trying to keep that rhythm going a lot of times
Yeah.
and it really has got me to where I've settled back a bit, and a lot of the things that we recorded in the studio, we didn't have a metronome. I was telling John this the other day, and I wish I could go back and record all those with those guys because they're just a little bit too fast. It'd been better if we had dialed it back. But playing with a metronome is real. It's stiff. It makes me stiff. There's a real art to be able to do that, or a craft. I never learned the art or the craft of playing with a metronome.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know.
A
There's
drummer,
all the
I'm
cats
about.
are studio musicians. They do it, of course, because that's what they have to do.
Click
They're all playing
tracks.
to a click track,
Right.
But in a band, I'm an old school guy. You remember these things called biorhythms?
Mm-hmm.
And I always say you got to play together for a while before your biorhythms get in sync.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
once they're in sync, everybody knows where they're going,
Right. Yeah.
But John, anything from your corner?
Well, I'm hoping everybody will, definitely check this show out because especially writers, and we're going to have a conversation about songwriting, and he's going to give us some pointers on the approach that people do because everybody has a little bit of different approach. Some start with chords, some start with a little melody line, and others start with just poetry and words that are put down, and then how you mix and start those together. And then the inspiration, where you get your inspiration to actually write the song. So I'm looking forward to your discussion on that.
That'd be fun.
Okay. Well, Mike, I appreciate you coming out here today.
Well, thank you, Keith.
It's been a pleasure to meet you and get to know about you. And hope you all come back and check out more of our interviews at galacticmusician.com. Thanks a lot.
Well, you lift your leg, then you shake it, Bill. Yeah, you lift your leg, then you shake it. Do the jazz dog, do the jazz dog, do the jazz dog, do the jazz dog. Lift your leg, then you shake it, Bill. Yeah.